In Cleveland, there's a house that looks completely ordinary at first glance, a white 3-story building. That's exactly where this photo was taken in 2003. Looks like there's nothing unusual about it, right? A young man and a woman are posing for the camera. They're smiling, hugging, and the photographer skillfully captures this happy moment. No one could have guessed that just behind that white door, terrifying things were happening. And at that very moment inside, a girl was being held captive, chained to a bed. This is the story of 3 lives that became tragically intertwined under horrifying circumstances. Their lives were changed forever. Michelle Knight was born on April 23, 1981, in Naples, Florida. And from the very beginning, things went wrong. She was raised by her mother and grandmother. Her father had long since left. Michelle was the unwanted child. She had 2 brothers and 2 sisters whom she eventually cared for more than her own mother did. The family was extremely poor. They couldn't even afford food, let alone furniture. They had to sit on the floor. They cooked food on the radiator because they didn't even have a stove. Making a simple hot dog would take about 4 hours. Michelle didn't know where this kind of life would lead her, but she made one thing clear to herself. She would not follow in her mother's footsteps. Sometimes she had to dig through trash bins just to find some warm clothes. One day, she found a blanket lying on someone's porch. Michelle took it for herself. She liked to bring it along when she went out. She'd sit under a bridge where cars passed overhead, calm herself down a little, and think about how her life would get better someday. She often skipped school. People there didn't like her either, and she was bullied. Instead of attending classes, Michelle would go to church and pray. One day, a parishioner noticed her and told her father. He picked her up, scolded her, and sent her back to school. But everything changed a year later. Michelle met a boy from school, and they started a relationship. She got pregnant, and at 18, in the year 2000, she gave birth to a son she named Joey. I wanted to be the best mom. I wanted to be better than my mom. It was hard, of course, because I didn't have much money, Michelle would later say. Still, she managed to care for her son and spent all her free time with him. But in the spring of 2002, her mother's boyfriend got drunk and broke Joey's knee. Social services found out about the incident, and in the end, the boy was taken away and placed in foster care. Michelle was devastated. She kept trying to call Child Protective Services, but no one answered the phone. No one ever called her back either. One day, she was given a chance to bring her son back. She had an appointment scheduled with Child Services on August 23, 2002. But Michelle never made it to that meeting. She didn't come home, not the next day, not the next week. Her mother and grandmother became worried and called the police. But the officers assumed Michelle had run away, unable to cope with having her son taken away. As a result, no one searched for her. Michelle's grandmother and mother felt it deep down. Michelle couldn't have just dropped everything and disappeared, and they were right. On that day, August 23, 2002, Michelle Knight was trying to find the building where she was supposed to meet with Child Protective Services. But she wasn't familiar with the area and got lost. That's when a man approached her, someone she recognized as her friend's father. It was Ariel Castro. He offered to help, saying he could give her a ride in his car. Michelle agreed. She knew the man and didn't feel threatened by him. Along the way, they chatted, and then Ariel suddenly said he needed to stop by his house to pick up his daughter. He also mentioned he wanted to show Michelle some puppies, and even promised to give her one. Michelle agreed. She had long dreamed of having a little puppy. When they entered the house, Ariel immediately led Michelle upstairs, to the bedrooms. That's where he said the puppies were, but as soon as they stepped into the room, his tone abruptly changed. He was no longer kind and friendly. He shut the door and pushed Michelle to the floor. In the process, he struck her in the head. Michelle started screaming and crying. She begged him to let her go, telling him her son was waiting for her. Then he grabbed a photo of Joey and tore it up right in front of her. "You're not going anywhere for a long time. You'll never see him again," he said. To silence her, he shoved a sock in her mouth. Then Ariel raped her, tied her hands and feet with rope, and suspended her body. In that position she remained for 3 whole days, without food, without water, without any chance to escape. When he returned, he untied her and brought her to the basement. There, he raped her again. At one point, someone knocked on the door. Ariel stuffed a rag into Michelle's mouth, put a motorcycle helmet on her, and chained her to a beam. She spent several more days in that condition. Michelle cried and begged him to let her go. She promised she wouldn't tell anyone, but her courage only enraged her captor. He beat her, then took her upstairs. "This is your bedroom now," he said. The room was filthy, with clothes and trash scattered everywhere. There was no bedding. She had to sleep on a dirty mattress that gave off a strong, unpleasant odor. There was a window, but it was completely boarded up with wooden planks. Not the slightest chance of escape. Michelle wasn't allowed to leave the room. Her movements were restricted by a heavy metal chain that wrapped around her stomach and arms. The other end was fastened to a radiator. He came to her every day, beat her, used her. But at some point he decided to show some care. Ariel brought a TV into Michelle's room and said she could watch it as much as she wanted. But there was one rule: she was not allowed to watch shows that featured black people. Ariel hated them. The days passed unnoticed. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. No one was looking for her. Her name wasn't mentioned on TV. Her face wasn't on missing person posters. That gave Castro a feeling of total control. He came to Michelle more and more often and kept reminding her, "No one needs you. The only thing you have now is me." Over time, he started to open up. One day, he confessed, "When I was a kid, someone raped me. I hate that person. He took advantage of my innocence. You probably think I don't have a family, but I do. My wife left me and took the kids. I hate her so much. Maybe that's why I'm like this." Michelle tried her hardest to understand him. She hoped that if she showed sympathy, if he believed she felt sorry for him, he might take pity on her and let her go. But he wasn't that simple. One day, Ariel forgot to lock the chains on Michelle before leaving for work. She seized the moment and tried to escape, but just as she reached the front door, she saw Ariel standing there. It turned out he had only pretended to leave. He was testing her. He took pleasure in tormenting his victim. For attempting to escape, he brutally beat Michelle. And just like that, a whole year passed. A year of violence and fear. During that time, Castro regularly had guests at his house. His children came by. Friends from the band he played in stopped over. But no one ever stumbled upon the battered, suffering girl. No one even heard her cries. That's because Ariel planned everything down to the last detail. When guests came over, he locked Michelle in the attic and forbade anyone from going up there. If she tried to scream, he turned up loud music so no one would hear her voice. At one point, their thoughts seemed to intersect. Michelle asked Ariel for a friend, someone she could talk to, but she had no idea that Castro had already long been planning a new abduction. Amanda Berry was a 16-year-old girl living in Cleveland with her mother and older sister who had 2 children of her own. Amanda was into fashion and dreamed of being the first in her family to go to college. To help pay for her education, she got a job at Burger King. On April 21st, 2003, the day before her 17th birthday, Amanda headed to work. That morning, her mother kissed her goodbye and wished her a good day. She could have taken the day off to prepare for her birthday, but she didn't. Amanda decided to work. As it turned out, she was let off early, but she never made it home. Her mother and sister quickly became worried. Amanda was always responsible. She wouldn't just disappear. She had no reason to run away. The family called the police. At first, the authorities didn't take the disappearance seriously. They assumed she had gone to a friend's house. But after reviewing her background, they realized they were wrong. The search began immediately. In Cleveland, nearly every utility pole was plastered with posters bearing Amanda's photo. But a week passed, then a month, and still no trace of the girl. No one even suspected that Michelle Knight's and Amanda Berry's disappearances were connected. On April 21st, while walking home, a trip that usually took just 10 minutes, Amanda noticed a car slowly following her. Behind the wheel was a man she recognized, her school friend's father, Ariel Castro. He offered her a ride home. Then he said they could stop by his place so she could see his daughter Angie. Amanda agreed. She hadn't seen Angie in a while, and the idea seemed harmless. They pulled up to a white 2-story house and went inside. Ariel said his daughter was in the shower. The bathroom door was locked. He suggested Amanda wait for her to finish and encouraged her to look around a bit. He led her upstairs and stopped in front of one of the doors. "There's a surprise waiting for you behind this door," he said. Amanda turned the handle and opened it. Inside, lying on a dirty mattress, was a naked woman. She was either asleep or unconscious. In that moment, Amanda understood everything, but it was already too late. Ariel grabbed the girl, dragged her into a dark room across the hall, and ordered her to stay quiet. He tied her hands behind her back and assaulted her. After that, he took Amanda to the basement, wrapped her arms and legs with duct tape, and put the same motorcycle helmet on her. "Stay quiet," he told her. "If you behave, you'll be home soon." But that was a lie. Amanda would stay in that house for a long, long time. A few days later, he brought her upstairs and, just like with Michelle, showed her a room. "This is your bedroom now," he said. There, Amanda found out that in the room next door lived Michelle Knight, the girl who had disappeared a year earlier. Amanda broke down in tears, from fear, from helplessness. She already understood. If Michelle hadn't managed to escape in all that time, then her own fate might be the same. The girls were forbidden from speaking to each other, but Michelle still tried to comfort Amanda, saying that maybe together they could outsmart their captor. But that never happened. Castro was always one step ahead. He now visited Amanda every day. She was quieter, more obedient, and he liked that. As a reward, he brought a TV into her room and asked if she needed anything else. Amanda asked only for a coloring book and a diary. In that diary, she would later document every day of her captivity in detail, hoping that one day the police would find her writings and put Ariel Castro behind bars. One day, while watching TV, Amanda saw her crying mother, pleading with the public to help find her daughter. Her mom even made a direct appeal to the kidnapper, begging him to bring Amanda home. There was also a segment featuring Amanda's mom and a local psychic. The woman claimed Amanda was dead and that her body would never be found. It was unbearable. Amanda watched her heartbroken mother cry on live television, and she couldn't do anything. She wanted to scream, "I'm here, I'm alive," but no one could hear her. A week after Amanda's disappearance, Ariel called her mother using Amanda's cell phone. He told her that Amanda was fine, that she was living with a man, and there was no need to worry. Unfortunately, in 2003, it wasn't possible to trace calls precisely, only the general area and street. Police staked out that area for a week, hoping he would call again, but he never did. Then, Ariel Castro abducted another young girl. This time, it was 14-year-old Gina de Jesus. It happened in May 2004. Gina had been walking home from school with her friend Angie Castro. It was Friday, the weekend was coming, and Gina invited Angie to stay over. Angie called her mom, but she didn't allow it. The girls said goodbye. Gina lent Angie some money for the bus and decided to walk home herself. Like Michelle and Amanda before her, Gina never made it home. On her way, Angie's father pulled up in his car and asked if she'd seen his daughter. Gina replied that they had just parted ways. She gave Angie bus fare and decided to walk. He offered her a ride home. Gina agreed, but he never took her home. Her fate was sealed. Ariel had already made up his mind. Gina was subjected to brutal beatings and abuse. Castro locked her in the basement. On the news, Michelle and Amanda saw that another girl had gone missing, but they had no idea she was being held in the same house's basement. For a whole month, Gina was chained up, filthy and starving. Castro knew he couldn't keep her in the basement forever, so he eventually brought her upstairs to Michelle's room and said, "You'll live together now." Every time Ariel came to visit the girls, he would chain one of them to the radiator so she couldn't attack him while he abused the other. When guests came over, he would take the captives to the basement and order them to stay quiet. If they tried to run or scream, he beat them and punished them by feeding them only once a day. They had to relieve themselves in a bucket that was rarely emptied. The stench in the rooms was unbearable. The girls were allowed to shower only once a week, and even then he gave them just a small piece of soap. One day, a neighbor heard women screaming from Castro's house, but the noise quickly stopped. The man called the police, but when officers arrived, they didn't inspect the home. They assumed it was a domestic dispute, and since the screams were only heard once, they let it go. After 3 years of captivity, in 2006, Amanda Berry began to feel nauseous constantly. She was pregnant. When Ariel found out, he allowed her to keep the baby. Her due date was in December. He handed Michelle a book on childbirth and told her to study it. She would be the one delivering the baby, since she was the oldest. Labor began on Christmas Day, December 25, 2006. Ariel brought out an inflatable kiddie pool and said Amanda would give birth in it. The birth was agonizing. The girls begged him to call an ambulance, but Ariel wouldn't hear of it. He warned Michelle, if the baby died, he would never forgive her. Michelle did everything she could to ease Amanda's pain. The baby was born blue and not breathing. It was a girl, a tiny, fragile being, born into a house of horror and torment. Michelle performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and miraculously, the baby started to breathe. After the birth, Ariel dragged Michelle into another room and raped her. In fact, Michelle Knight bore the brunt of Ariel's violence. She was the strongest in spirit and often took the beatings herself, trying to shield the other girls from the worst of it. Gina was his favorite. He gave her more food, dressed her in better clothes, perhaps because she was the youngest. Years passed. Amanda's daughter, whom she named Jocelyn, grew older and started asking questions. Why couldn't Mommy and the aunties leave the house? What were those metal things they wore? Ariel called them bracelets. He always found ways to justify his actions. Eventually, he began taking Jocelyn outside, even to church. He introduced her to his parents, saying she was his daughter from a previous relationship. Jocelyn called him Daddy, and to the public, he claimed she was his brother's child. Ariel truly loved Jocelyn. He often spoiled her and spent time playing with her. When she turned 6, he decided to remove the chains from the women so that Jocelyn wouldn't start asking too many questions. From then on, they were allowed to sit together at the table. In his mind, they were a family. They lived like this for a whole 10 years, in fear and horror, waking up each day with the hope that someone might come to save them. Amanda taught her daughter how to read and write. She created an illusion of normal life, that they were going to school, walking down streets with traffic lights and cars. She told her daughter, "Always look right, then left before crossing the street." Amanda was good at pretending they had a normal life, and because of this, Jocelyn didn't feel like a prisoner. She never realized what her mother had gone through. In April 2013, Ariel came home and said he had been fired. He told the women that they'd need to cut back on food expenses. Supporting 3 women and a child had become too much. For a whole month, they survived on crackers and chips. Then, on May 6, 2013, a miracle happened. Jocelyn noticed that her father's car wasn't in the driveway. He must have left. For the first time, Ariel had left Amanda's room door unlocked. Amanda saw her chance, but she was still terrified. What if this was another one of his tests? She ran to the front door and began screaming for help. She stuck her arm through a crack in the door and begged for someone to come. Her cries were heard by neighbors. Amanda shouted her name, and they recognized it instantly. Everyone had believed she was long dead. One of the neighbors broke part of the door open, and Amanda ran out holding her child. She borrowed a phone and called 911. Within minutes, Ariel Castro's home was surrounded by police cars. Officers burst into the house and found 2 more women inside. Michelle ran into one officer's arms, crying, "You saved us." It was a true miracle. All 3 women were alive. They were immediately taken to the hospital. Michelle Knight's doctor later told her she had only days left to live. Her condition was that critical. Amanda and Gina were discharged 2 days later and reunited with their families. Michelle was released on the 4th day. 53-year-old Ariel Castro was arrested. He was found at a fast food restaurant nearby. He already knew the women had escaped. Later, he admitted that he let them go because he couldn't carry the burden any longer, but he expressed no remorse. In court, Castro remained calm. He never asked for forgiveness. He said he only regretted getting caught. He tried to blame his actions on childhood trauma and claimed he himself had been a victim of abuse. Thanks to his guilty plea, he avoided the death penalty. In August 2013, Ariel Castro was sentenced to 1,000 years in prison. But Ariel Castro never served his sentence. He turned out to be far weaker than his victims. Just 1 month after being incarcerated, he hanged himself in his prison cell. During the trial, the prosecution revealed that Castro had once strangled one of the women with a vacuum cleaner cord after she tried to escape. The house where Castro tortured the women was demolished by the authorities. The survivors gradually returned to their lives, though they were deeply traumatized. Michelle made a significant recovery. At the time of her rescue, she weighed only 38 kilograms. About 84 pounds. Her son is growing up in a foster family. In 2016, she married a man who loves and supports her. Unfortunately, Michelle is no longer able to have children. While in captivity, she became pregnant 5 times, but each pregnancy was forcibly terminated. Castro beat her in the stomach with dumbbells and jumped on her, causing miscarriages. These injuries caused permanent damage to her reproductive system. Amanda is raising her daughter, Jocelyn, and Gina DeJesus has chosen not to share the details of her personal life with the media. The three women do not keep in touch, but they have wished each other healing and happiness for the future. If you found this story interesting, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There are many more shocking cases ahead. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss it together.